We all know those GLP-1 injections work wonders, but that price tag almost gave me a heart attack when my insurance denied coverage. I was staring at a choice between paying my mortgage or paying for weight loss. Talk about a rock and a hard place. Then I found Elevate Health compounded semaglutide at just $58 with payment plans that don't require a second mortgage. Same medication, same results, but a price that real folks can actually afford. Visit joinelevate.com today. That's JOINELEVATE.com. Your wallet will be as happy as your waistline. This medication is not FDA approved.
Hold your ears, folks. It's showtime.
People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
だから。イエービッグソン。どうする？名前バンド。それよりもさ、ちゃんとうまくやるのが先でしょ？そういうの大事だって。
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of the Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I am talking with Chance Huskey. He is the Vice President of Distribution at GKIDS. It is an organization out of New York that is distributing all kinds of great films, including the film Linda, 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 which is having a revival screening. Definitely check your local listings, and if you happen to miss it, it will be coming out on Blu-ray and hopefully digital pretty darn soon. I had a chance to see it a few years ago on a not that great DVD, so I'm super excited that this is getting a restoration and more people will have a chance to see it. It is a lot of fun, and I hope you have fun listening to this interview. Can you give me a little bit of your background?
Yeah, I'm originally from Nashville, Tennessee. I moved to New York in 2009 to go to NYU, where I intended to study classics and ended up in film studies, and sort of the rest was history. It was through that department that I met the president of our company, Dave Jestet, who I think was also an alumnus of the film studies program there. And I got an internship at GKIDS back in 2013, which at the time was really focused on these sort of prestige animated films, you know, The Secret of Kells, A Cat in Paris, Chico and Rita, and had made a name for itself on that stuff. And then basically I had been hired to help handle repertory screenings. At the time, we had just taken over theatrical rights for the Ghibli catalog. And so I was managing the theatrical tour of those 35 millimeter prints before they were digitized into DCPs and stuff. So I've been at the company ever since, and I've seen it grow from there. But in terms of me personally, basically, I've been at the company long enough that it is sort of me. So there you go.
For GKIDS, is that Ghibli or does that stand for Godzilla?
Technically, it stands for guerrilla, like guerrilla warfare. I like to think that it can stand for whatever you want it to stand for. So the Ghibli Association is nice. The Godzilla Association is nice. But Guerrilla Kids was, I think, the production company that the CEO ran that helped produce the festival, out of which GKIDS then spun. Complicated situation. A lot has changed in the last year, but long story short, the current CEO, Eric Beckman, founded the company as a kind of spin-off of a festival he'd been running since the 90s, the New York International Children's Film Festival. So when I joined, the two companies were essentially the same still, but around 2013, 2014, they technically, or I guess more formally split. The festival still runs as its own nonprofit, but GKIDS became its own standalone for-profit distribution entity. And we basically made it work for a really long time. Basically, it's just compared to these sort of billionaire-owned venture capital-backed independent companies, we were really scrappy. And for a long time, we were about 4 to 7 people. And around 2018, we started to work more in the anime space. And I think that all facilitated a broader range of projects for us to work on. And we brought on a lot more people. And about a year ago, October of 2024, the company formally sold to Toho in Japan. And it's still fully autonomous, but we now report into the bigger Toho conglomerate and its myriad, I guess you could call them sort of cousin companies that kind of exist inside of it. But mostly everything has basically stayed the same, and we're just handling Toho projects that we probably would have been bidding on anyway.
You now have an in, I suppose.
It's nice to have friends. I guess that's the way that I think about it. Compared to like when you're out there alone in the independent space, things feel a little lonely. A lot of the New York distributors and exhibitors can attest to.
What are some of the things that GKIDS have brought out over the last few years?
Most notably, we handled the US and Canadian distribution for The Boy and the Heron, which is Miyazaki's latest film. And I would say after that, Bell was a pretty big one, which was Mamoru Hosoda's last film. He has a new film coming out from Sony this year called Scarlet. But we've handled everything big and small. Like, we do a lot of repertory stuff. And I'm here, I guess, in part to talk about Linda, Linda, Linda. We've handled a theatrical re-release of The End of Evangelion from Hideaki Anno, Mamoru Oshii's Ghost in the Shell 2 Innocence. And then in addition to that, we do a lot of European films still. So last year we did Mars Express from Jeremy Perrin and Chicken for Linda from Sebastian Lodenbach and Chiara Malta. And so trying to like basically keep a little bit of balance in there, because GKIDS' mission initially was really about the best animation from all around the world. And so we still try to live up to that where we can.
Linda, Linda, Linda is not an animated film. So can you tell me a little bit about how that project came to you?
The history with that film goes back quite a bit to the festival that I mentioned, because I think a lot of programmers from the mid-2000s remember this film very fondly. And I believe it screened at Nike for the New York Children's Film Festival back when the film came out. And it just retained this very positive energy and became kind of a cult film over time with periodic repertory screenings. I believe Japan Society held some a few years ago. And we ended up working on one of the director's most recent films, which happened to be animated, called Ghost Cat Anzu. And so Yamashita-san had worked together with an animator, Yoko Kuno, to basically create, I mean, it's like a slacker indie comedy, and it's shot like one, but it uses rotoscoping in a really innovative way. And so it's kind of like, it's like a Totoro-esque, but it has a lot of the same sort of indie comedy vibe that you would expect from the director. And so I think that basically, like, when we started handling that, we thought, wouldn't it be like a great idea to work on Linda, 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 or re-release that? And then Bitters End approached us, and we said we'd absolutely love to kind of work on this. And it's not totally without precedent. Earlier this year, we did Anno's Love and Pop, which is a film from the late 90s that Anno had worked on. And so there's a little bit of, oh, if you know this director from their animated work, we can carry that audience with us into live action. But I expect that we'll continue to work on developing this vertical for sure. I think it's a really special film with a kind of, I don't know, like a fundamental elemental power that like sticks with people over time, which is why I think it's developed this reputation. And I think a lot of people who have seen it on DVD, because it sort of like came out in peak DVD era, I think you'll be really surprised when you revisit it in the restoration, because it looks really, really gorgeous in a way that I was caught off guard by the first time I saw it, the restored version.
Yeah, with the DVD version that I saw, it was very tough to tell when it was supposed to be the camcorder footage versus not the camcorder footage. So having that distinction, I'm sure, was going to be very eye-opening.
So much of the film is in its framing and its interiors and things like that. And so as a visual experience, like I would say it's deceptively simple in terms of how it's presenting. There's a lot going on, but feeds it to you in this way that you don't realize how much information it's conveying to you in the moment.
You're right. It is very universal. The whole struggle of high school students, especially outcastish type of girls, it just really spoke to me. And just also the music is fantastic.
The music, I think, is what sticks with people. It reminds me of Nashville or something, right? It's like people leave the theater like thinking about the song, or that kind of like leaves you with that last impression. And so when you're watching it or when you're rewatching it, part of the anticipation of that moment is just so much of part of the experience. And I think lends itself to like the act of rewatching or the act of re-experiencing. But also, like to your point, there's like a kind of nostalgia for this kind of moment in youth where everything has this sort of special, like I said, like an elemental power to it. And I feel like the film like captures that in microcosm, and that kind of gives it this unique quality.
You talked a little bit about how the company grew in 2018, and I'm curious how the pandemic affected you guys.
Ultimately, it worked out for us. I think we got really, really lucky because we had around 2017, 2018, we had taken on more rights on the side of the Ghibli catalog, and we were in the process of re-releasing a lot of those films on new Blu-ray editions and things like that. And I think we were able to pivot to a model that was more video oriented, and I say like repertory oriented. And like I said, we've been in that space from the beginning because a lot of what I was doing when I joined the company was managing like touring retrospectives, but being able to enter the DVD and Blu-ray market with such heavy hitters, I think really helped the company grow. Speaking personally, a lot of what I was working on in 2020 and 2021 was like the sort of low-key, I guess you could call it like the life support cinema experience. So working on theatrical releases of films like Wolfwalkers and Earwig and the Witch as much as I could, and then separately working on a direct sale store online, like an online e-commerce play. And we had taken over the rights for Neon Genesis Evangelion at that time. And so we had this luxurious, ultimate edition that we were putting out to market, but also just regular editions that were selling pretty well. Evangelion hadn't been available on a commercial DVD at that point in probably 15, 20 years since the platinum sets. I still have a lot of film friends who are very possessive of their platinum DVD sets of that series, but there's a whole new generation. Speaking of Linda, there's a whole new generation of people who like really appreciate the ability to access these things or to own them, as opposed to just having them on streaming. Evangelion obviously made a huge splash when it went direct to Netflix, and that's like how I'd say the broader public has encountered it these days. But the Blu-ray sets are nice.
Yeah, it's amazing that you've got the theatrical, you've got the Blu-ray, you've got the streaming. I mean, just to have the e-commerce, to be able to have that reach, especially in a market like this these days where everything is so fragmented.
Personally, I'm a big collector. I'm not as big as other people in the industry. I think about like Vinegar Syndrome or something like that, where people are just buying everything that they possibly can or whatever. But personally, like I do feel a lot of pride when I like am able to line up all the spines of the Blu-rays or whatever in such a way that they match. Or when I think about the Ghibli collection, like the way that it's nice that there's like uniformity across them, or however you see it. And then my colleague Allison Cosberg, who oversees home media, has put together some just really amazing products over the years of all of our stuff, like the Masaki Yuasa 5-film box set, the aforementioned Evangelion box sets. And then we've also been working on Arcane, which is the Fortiche television show for Netflix and Riot, the game developer for League of Legends, and we have some really awesome products there as well. So I say that because I can't take credit for those. I can take credit for purchasing them myself. So there you go.
So besides the upcoming re-release of Linda, 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 what kind of stuff are you looking forward to seeing coming out from GKIDS this year?
So I'm thinking a lot about Toronto because I'm headed there tomorrow, but we have a really amazing film out of France that's like a genuine discovery called Little Amelie, or The Character of Rain. And this is an adaptation of a Belgian novel from Amélie Nothomb that's semi-autobiographical, but it imagines the inner life of, I guess, a 3-year-old. You could think of it as a coming-of-age film in a kind of weird way. She's a Belgian girl growing up in Japan and basically reconciling with this idea that she doesn't really belong there, or is otherwise, a foreign presence. I guess in a weird way, it does tie in a little bit to Linda, Linda, Linda in the sense of overcoming a language barrier or a cultural divide and finding out who you are. But it's a really tremendous film from the studio that did Calamity and Long Way North. And so it's got this really cool flat graphic style, but it's got a surprising amount of depth and shine to it for something like that. It's very different from like the graphic style people associate with quote unquote cartoons. And because of the literary source material, it's got a lot of like screenplay depth that I think is really uncommon among animated films, generally speaking. That's our big kind of prestige fall title. And then, like I said, we have just a lot going on in the anime space as well. We're working on the 40th anniversary re-release of Angel's Egg from Mamoru Oshii and Yoshitaka Amano. And we released the poster and trailer for that a few weeks ago, and that got just amazing traction. That's a film similar to Linda, Linda, Linda in terms of a long, long cult status, a long period of unavailability. Yeah. And as a lifelong gamer, I've always loved Yoshitaka Amano's art for Final Fantasy, and so it's a great privilege to be working on the film. And I think it'll have surprising traction, probably in theaters for a 72-minute film from 40 years ago. I think younger viewers today really want to be challenged by films. I feel like Angel's Egg is like a real proving ground for that. Our big November release is.
Yeah, that's another one I'm really excited to see. So I'm stoked for that one too. Is there a good place for people to keep up with what you guys are doing out online?
Yeah, our Instagram account is my favorite place to keep up with the stuff. I guess that reveals me to be a peak millennial, but our Instagram handle is GKIDS Films, and I feel like it's my favorite place to engage with our the stills from the films, posters, trailers, just because so much of what we handle is so visual. I guess that's true for any film company, but especially like the types of films that we're handling have this like strong aesthetic pull to them that people just really love to get into the replies on. And I love our social team. I think they do a really great job of curating looks from the wide variety of films that we're handling, both, I guess, animated and live action films as we start to incorporate those as well.
Chance, thank you so much for your time. This was great talking with you, sir.
Yeah, no, anytime. It's been really nice.
ドブネズミみたいに美しくなりたい写真には写らない美しさがあるからリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダもしも僕がいつか君と出会い話し合うならそんな時はどうか愛の意味を知ってくださいリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダリンダ し合うならそんな時はどうか愛の意味を知ってください愛じゃなくても恋じゃなくても君を話はしない決して負けない